Thank you for listening to Coffee with the Crossing. My name is Cody Most. I'm the media director of the Crossing Fellowship. Joining with us today is Jonathan Phillips, the worship and youth pastor, Jessica Most, and Ellie Powers from Wildflower Ministries. Today we are taking a millennial/Gen Z view on worship. I love this series and I hope you do as well. Alrighty. Well, today we're going to do something a little different because we have a lot of new people. And we're going to talk about worship today. So instead of questions or dad jokes, we're going to jump in on how all of us got into a worship team or onto a worship team. And we'll start with Ellie.
All right. Well, I got on a worship team when I was 13. My mom was on the team, and I would sit in the pews, and I would bring my guitar, and I'd strum along with them. And the worship leader, actually, he saw me there, and he let me do that. And then he also invited me on stage to play with them, and he taught me a lot of tips and tricks. And then he let me be on the team, and I've been on ever since, pretty much. So, yeah.
Jessica?
I was also 13 when my mom taught me how to play chords on a piece of paper. We just walked through the different chords, and she's like, okay, you hit this chord when they sing this word, you hit this chord when they sing this word. So then I started playing piano on the worship team, and then after I graduated high school, I was working out at camp, and Jafili was leading worship for one of the staff chapels, and I was like, "Oh, that looks like fun." He brought this box drum thing called a cajon, and I was like, "Whoa, that looks like so much fun! I've seen people play these. Why not? I'll give it a go." So I sat down and I started playing, and after we were done, he was like, "When did you learn how to play that?" And I was like, I didn't." So then after that, I played cajon on the worship team.
Yeah. So when you said that you learned how to play on a piece of paper, I thought you meant like your mom drew a piano on the paper, because I was all like, what? You were meaning like chords.
Yes, the chords were on a paper.
That makes so much more sense.
We had a piano. We have a piano. Yes.
Oh my gosh. I was so confused. I'm like, how did you learn that way? What the heck? Mom must be a really good artist or something. Jeez. Well, I started on a worship team when I was in 4th grade. So I don't know. I don't do math. So however old, not 9, 10, 11, I don't know, somewhere in there. Probably not 11, 9,
10,
I don't know.
Maybe 10.
Somewhere in there. So my family has always done music stuff. Like my whole family is really musical, and we like to sing together. And so we started when we moved to Haxton, Colorado. My dad was the pastor at a church, and they didn't really have a worship team. They had 2 people that could kind of sing a little bit, and that was about it. And so we all started learning instruments and just kind of started picking up. So we were our church's worship team for a while, and so that was kind of how I got started doing that. So
Nice. I ran the slides for a very long time.
Yeah, in the senior center.
What PK?
Miss Jane taught us how to do it right.
But then I played the tuba in marching band, and for some reason everybody thought that our worship team needed a bass player, and somehow conveniently, being a pastor's kid, I received a bass guitar for my birthday. And then
how convenient.
Then like a month later, he led worship, and he's like, "Hey Cody, you want to play bass?" Sure.
That's how our dad does things.
He just kind of throws you in there.
Throws you in. I had never driven before, and he brought me into the DMV to take my driver's test,
Yep.
and he's like, "Here you go," and I'm like, "Okay, here we go."
Yep.
Didn't pass, but that's still how we did things.
But yeah, then I just played bass. I had no idea what I was doing. I still have no idea what I'm doing. But then I've been playing for a while, and then I picked up the guitar and I played. I went from the E to the G chord, and once I got that, I was like, "Oh, I love this,"
I love that.
and haven't put it down since. So
That's gonna sound kind of creepy on the podcast. Oh, I love this. Might sound creepy.
yeah. How do you transition after being creepy?
You
Just
I'll
embrace
just
it and go.
I'll just go with my slogan. I'm just awkward.
There we go.
Yeah.
Love it.
Alrighty, so our first question is to you guys. Well, I'll start it off here that we're all between the ages of 20 and 30, so we're kind of on the front end of becoming the leaders and the faces of churches around the country, and so we're trying to give kind of our viewpoint of what worship is to us, and later on we'll try and have a podcast with older people, not older people, but
People in a different generation that is beyond our generation.
yes, that, and get their viewpoint of worship, just to kind of cover it all, and that way there's more of an understanding of why we're doing some of the things we do and singing the songs that we do and stuff like that. So to you guys, what is worship to you? We'll start with Jessica.
Well, worship to me is a heart, and it's anything that you do that you can bring glory to God. And so any way that you can honor him and any way that you can bring other people closer to him, that to me is worship. And anything where you can specifically bring your mind into focus on God and what he is doing and how you can join him. So a lot of the time that is singing, because when you are in that musical atmosphere, your mind automatically focuses, and so it brings your mind to focus on what you're singing about. So when you're praising God, that's most of the time what we think of when we think of worship. But for me, I worship when I'm walking in the woods somewhere. Like at Maranatha, they have an awesome nature trail, and I'll walk on the nature trail and just start praying, and that is also worship. Or I know a lot of athletes love to worship in their sport because that helps their mind focus. So just anything that puts your mind on Christ, anything that you're doing that brings him glory, and other people see that and they're like, wow, they are living for something outside of themselves, and I want to know what it is. That is worship in my life.
Yeah. So worship, a simple definition that I learned for it is worship is an outward expression of an inward transformation. So the inward transformation obviously being how Christ has transformed us and given us life. And so anything that you do, regardless of what action it is, but anything that you do outwardly to express the joy of Christ changing you and transforming your heart, that's worship. And so like what Jessica said, that could be playing sports, that could be going for a walk, that could be leading worship, that could be anything where you are taking the joy that you have from being transformed by Christ and letting it to or letting it impact your actions.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people do just think it is music because we say worship music. We say we're going to worship. And that's, worship team. It is a form of worship. But I found also in my life, I have a lot of other ways to worship, like you guys were saying. For me, it a lot of times is doing art. So taking that that creative gift that God has given me, but also the joy from transformation, and then putting that to something and then giving it to someone, because that's always fun. But yeah, I think worship is definitely more than just music, and it stems from a place, like John said, of transformation. It's
I think it's the reason most people think of worship being music is because in church we call it corporate worship, because that's one of the easiest ways for us to worship together. Through singing and through music.
That's
so
true.
For people that are maybe new to the church or new in the faith or anything like that, they don't necessarily understand what it is, and so we get into the habit of just saying, well, let's worship. And so they just associate, well, worship is music. But it just goes a lot deeper than that.
It's true.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. For me, I worship through hearing the song lyrics and then just like meditating on each line or phrase, and then seeing how it applies to my life and just how great God is through worship, and then just taking a walk outside and just listening to those lyrics.
What was it that Uncle Nate used to say? Think about what you're singing. Yep. Don't just sing it. Think about it. He said that back in youth group, and then now that I'm out of youth group, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yep.
Hey, he's on to something.
But yeah, I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, I thought you were moving on. I'm sorry. I was waiting for your transition to inject. I'm very sorry.
But yeah, so why is it we worship? And this one for me is I see what all has happened in my personal life, and then I see what God has brought me out of. And there's a few songs that are super close to my heart that when we sing them, all I want to do is just fall on my knees and cry. And that's why I worship, is just knowing how great God is and how not I am.
Yeah. I think, we were created that way. Like, God created us to be in relationship with Him, and a way that we can do that is through worship and connecting with Him. And for me, it's definitely been music and in my life. And like you said, that place of surrender, a lot of times when God puts the lyrics on your heart, and you just get it, and you're like, I get it, God. Like, thank you. And so it's just, yeah,
I think for me, one of the reasons that, I worship for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons, because I know how bad of a person I am, like inside my own head, like I'm an awful person. And
same.
When we like, you're in my relationship, like if I were to offend you or you were to offend me, our natural response as humans is to like, I want nothing to do with that person. And we push them away. But whenever we sin or we have bad thoughts in our mind or whatever it is, God still pursues us and God still uses us. And that is one of the reasons that I worship, because I'm like, wow, like if God were right here and He had my same heart, He would want nothing to do with me. But because God is nothing like me, He still knows my heart, knows where I'm at, knows my thoughts, but still wants to use me to serve Him. And that's like one of the greatest reasons for us to worship, is God in His grace still chooses to use us.
That's really good. Something that I have always found when I worship, probably my biggest fault, I don't know if that's the right word to use, maybe my biggest obstacle when it comes to my walk with Christ is distraction. And it's a way that I can not involve my emotions in life so that I don't wear myself out is really, I've learned over the years that it's a defense mechanism. But I distract myself. And so worship always, always, always will bring me back to focus. And it will always, no matter how distracted I've been all week long, it doesn't matter if I haven't read my Bible in a month or 3 months, whatever it may be, I can worship and I can think about the words, like Cody was saying, I can think about the words that I'm singing and I can apply them in my life, and it never fails to bring me back to God. And it's like right there, He is meeting me where I'm at. I'm never farther away than I was at the beginning. So that's why I worship, for sure. It brings me back to focus.
A question with that that I think about a lot is why sometimes do we not want to worship?
Mm-hmm.
What is that thing in our mind when we know that it'll give us life, when we know that it'll give us peace? Why do we hesitate sometimes?
For me, I know every time if I don't worship, I don't read my Bible, I don't pray, I don't serve, I don't witness to others, whatever it may be, the reason I don't do it is because I'm scared of involving myself, because involvement takes energy and energy leads to burnout, and burnout can lead to some really scary places in my life. And so I live in constant fear of falling into depression, and that's hands down a real fear in my life. And so involvement, to me, if I start to involve myself, then I won't stop. And if I don't stop, then I'll completely tear myself apart. And so if I choose not to worship sometimes because I simply don't want to expel the energy.
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons, but one is the fear of being open. Because that terrifies people when you are opening up your heart. Because like what we just talked about, we know how bad people we actually are in our hearts. And so the thought of like, okay, now I have to be open about that. I don't really want to do that. But it's also that, and it's also not understanding or not wanting to understand God's grace. Because we like to think that we need to earn things as humans. And so, man, now I totally lost where I was going with this. Oh my gosh. No, okay. There we go. Now it's kind of back, I think. So how we like to think that we need to earn things for God's grace. And so God is just like, hey, come as you are, worship, like come to me. And we think, well, I'm going to kind of sit in my own sin and make myself sit through this punishment, like I'm grounding myself for 2 weeks until I can come back to God. Like we think we have to do something to clean ourselves up before we can go to God. And that's a huge lie that keeps people from worshiping God.
I think my dad calls that his dark room, when he's punishing himself and he doesn't allow himself to meet God because he's messed up, and he thinks that he needs to have that banishment, like he said, that he calls that his dark room. It's a scary place.
And I think a lot of people they hear this phrase that you're not hiding it from God. He already knows everything in your life. But it doesn't really like feel true until you like later on, and you're like, oh man, I should just let it go, because he already knows what's going on in my heart and what I'm thinking and what I've done. And another, like going off of what John said, just knowing that one of my favorite lyrics that just came out was, the one who made the world thinks the world of me. I mean, he doesn't hate me. He knows everything I've thought, everything I've done. And he still loves me. And so there's a huge relationship difference that can happen when you start like understanding and like following through with, he already knows everything and he still loves me. So why don't I just let it all out?
And we hear that a lot, but still, it's so good
Yeah.
It's so true.
And it's good to remind yourself because, like, you
Mhm.
could be. I find myself in my life in the dark room, but not really realizing it until I'm like, where am I?
Yeah.
And I guess just a question of, okay, I recognize it. How do I get out?
Yeah.
In those times, it's been like a period of just surrendering to God, and being like, here I am. I know you knew I was here, but I want to be with you, and I want to dance with you, and I want to be free. So set me free from this.
Mhm.
And then that's the time that I've had like the most genuine worship in my life, for sure.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So if you're listening, hop over to our Facebook page and comment on how you guys worship, and just let us know, or what you think of what worship is to you. So,
Cool.
Yeah, we'll continue on with this series on worship in our next couple episodes. So stay tuned, and we'll see ya. Thank you for tuning in to Coffee with the Crossing, where we do an in-depth discussion on different topics. If you haven't listened to previous podcasts, I highly encourage you to do so. We have a new episode every Friday. To stay up to date with us, smash that subscribe button and the notification bell on YouTube, and like our Facebook page, The Crossing Fellowship. We'll see you later.